Good afternoon, evening, or morning, depending on where you're at, beautiful people. Lucky to have Zoje here today. Zoje, nice to see you, brother. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for asking. I like your spectacles. I like they mirror mine. So Zoje was one of our students. That's how I got to know him. He has been the voice I've followed most closely for on the ground coverage of what's been going on. And to say that it's for the last few weeks completely minimizes how long we've been leading to this point. But I'll just say for the last few weeks, with the protests and the rallies, he's been my voice to get unbiased information coming straight to me that connects with me really well. So we know him as our student. I've now gotten to know another side of him, which I really like and enjoy. That's why I wanted to have you on. Zoje, please tell us your story and don't leave anything out.
Sure. I am a first generation Nigerian American. Both of my parents are from Nigeria originally, and they moved to New York to pursue their higher education many years ago. I was born in Philadelphia, and I moved to Illinois when I was 3, and lived there until I was 12, and then I moved to Virginia Beach. So I was in Virginia Beach for the end of middle school and high school. And then I moved to New York when I was 18 for college. And I attended Columbia University, originally a pre-med major, and ended up double majoring in psychology and dance. During my junior year, I auditioned for my dance agency that I'm still currently with, MSA in New York. And began working in the commercial dance industry. So I've been working in that industry for about 13 years, and have done a lot of work on television, film, worked with a lot of different recording artists, worked with a couple of different companies. And I also have representation with a modeling agency, Wilhelmina Models, and have done a lot of work with them for different brands, New York Fashion Week. And in addition to that, I do some work in youth development. So I taught at a high school in the Lower East Side for 4 years as the dance teacher. And I also ran their after-school dance program and coached 2 dance teams for middle school and high school. On my own, I co-directed the New York Youth Movement Collaborative, which was opportunity for artists and young movers aged 16 and up to work on articulating and creating their solo voices. In addition to that, I directed and founded an initiative called Team Z, which was for middle school students, 11 to 14. That was similar to NYMC, but for middle schoolers. And in that program, we also had a pre-professional component in which we brought in choreographers from New York City to work with them and kind of share a little bit of their story with them. So yeah, those are the 3 main things that I do.
Cool. Is the Z for Zoje, or is that just...
It is.
You have your own team? Like, can I get a Team S one of these days?
One of my students from Eastside Community High School, which it's 6th grade through senior year, she actually came up with the name Team Z, and it stuck. So
when you have a letter like that, it could go any way. It's just a cool. Like, the Z is as cool as the last name of my last name just being horny. Like, it kind of stands alone on its own. So
yeah.
Been blessed. Hey, why don't you tell us, before we get into the 5 questions and everything like that, just tell us what today looked like for you. You woke up, I'll start you with that, and then you fill in the rest.
Yes. So very specific. Today I woke up and actually did a little bit of like a social media shoot for Nike NYC. It's Pride Month. And so happy Pride. And so they sent me some product, and so I was just working on producing some content for that. And then I have been keeping tabs on kind of the Black Lives Matters movement, mostly through a resource called Justice for George NYC. And they have been really publishing a lot of the protests and rallies that have been going on in New York City and the greater New York area. And so there was a rally protest this morning on 125th and Adam McLean and Powell. So I joined that march, and then I came home, had some food, took a nap, and now here we are.
That's great. So I'm going to kick you off with your first question. I would like to know what is your experience protesting, attending these rallies been like during the last few weeks? Kind of give us an overall impression. I'm sure it's taking you in a lot of different ways mentally. Walk us through that journey, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first kind of like community organizing that I did was in the middle of March. There was a Run with Maud day that I participated in, which I also found out via social media. And I feel like that was kind of like when everything kind of, this movement of just kind of information sharing on social media started. So I joined that and kind of like posted about it, talked to some friends about it. And then after George Floyd died, there was kind of like this even bigger boom of, you know, this is something that we've been dealing with for such a long time, but we're all sitting at home and we're watching this happen. And how do we get involved this time in a different way? And I think a lot of people kind of had that same feeling simultaneously. And the first rally was at Barclays in Brooklyn. And I believe that was on the 29th. And after that, many different organizations have kind of just, and individuals have come forward and been like, I need to do something and we need to do our part to bring awareness to what's going on right now and try to make change in as many ways as we can. And so I've been attending protest rallies and press conferences for about 4 weeks. And generally speaking, it's been really uplifting. There's this huge share of information that's going on right now via social media. And, you know, the youth is out, adults are out, local politicians are out. Everyone is kind of out trying to share information and support the movement in different ways. There's been bike protests, there's been meditation protests. Of course, there have been marches every single day, and a lot of community-based and youth-based organizing. So it's just been really amazing and encouraging. For me, I really wanted to kind of establish what consistent and regular practice of protest look like. And so I've been very fortunate to live in New York City, where this has been ongoing every single day. And there are physical events that I can attend every single day as a reminder that there's still work to be done. And it's encouraged me to come home and order books and do reading and watch documentaries and have conversations with friends, have some uncomfortable conversations with people that I work with about what our individual roles in this kind of massive movement is.
And take us back a little. You touched on this in the beginning, but prior to George Floyd, you touched on it a little bit and kind of lead up, but can you take us back even a little bit more? Just kind of take us through what your role has been as far as an activist, or perhaps even not, and that's okay. I just would like to hear almost the run up to where we're at today a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've always considered my role in activism to be through youth development. I've always just kind of felt like, you know, the more that I engage with youth and share my story, share my perspective, and kind of encourage them for the better, that has been like the avenue that felt most comfortable and most relevant to me. I have attended protests before. I remember, was it 2012 when Trayvon Martin was killed? That was another time where, you know, this movement kind of really stood out to me because I looked exactly like Trayvon Martin when I was 12 years old. I lived in a predominantly white neighborhood. I used to walk around in hoodies, you know what I mean? Just kind of the activity and behavior that you would expect of like a young Black male. And it just struck a chord with me because I was like, this easily could have been me. Like I was him at his age. And I remember talking about it on social media. I remember talking about it with friends. And I also remember going out and protesting. And then I remember when George Zimmerman was arrested, we were all kind of, hopeful. We we're like, okay, he's been arrested. He's been charged. And I think we all had a different type of, not that we had a confidence in the judicial system, but we had maybe just not as keen of an awareness of the judicial system as the awareness that we're having collectively right now. And when George Zimmerman wasn't convicted and so many other people like him haven't been convicted, I think we've all just kind of not really known what the next step is, just been like, that's terrible. Like, I can't believe, he could get away with it, or so many other people could get away with it. And I think we've looked at a lot of these incidents or murders like Trayvon's as isolated incidents. And what the conversation has shifted to largely is how all of these murders are related and how they're connected to a larger systematic issue, and how we really have to consistently get involved and do our due diligence to educate ourselves if we really want things to change and we want to prevent this from happening again.
Yeah, and I think Trayvon Martin affected a lot of people in a lot of ways. And that was the first time, as a person in science, like I have my master's, I had to write a thesis, many semesters on research. That was when I first sat down and started to look at the numbers. I mean, I'm a data-driven person. Mm-hmm. And what was so sad and scary was that there was no data. They're still taking out the Washington Post's collective effort towards this. There is no data.
Right.
It's not something it is something that the FBI would keep track of, perhaps not reporting, because we see huge jumps from what the FBI reported to what the Washington Post would report, who's following local publications. Mm-hmm. But the breakdown for the FBI when reported had nothing to do with race. So it wasn't on, and this isn't me I'm just saying, like, that was not part of their data collection. Therefore, it could not be used to assess. And therefore, there is no way to assess and then address. Does that make sense? Like, again, I bring everything back to physical therapists. I don't guess, I assess, and I address. When you look for data that doesn't exist, I think you're going to have a hard time addressing a problem because you won't actually be aware of where it may be occurring more in certain scenarios, in certain areas, what's working, what's not working. So that was a little bit of a frustrating point, obviously. And anytime I say I was frustrated, I realize how small my frustration would be in comparison to anyone else involved who knew one person, even casually. But I feel like it goes to say that it is that the data is now, at least from other sources, being collected. And as you said, through social media, people are starting to get more sharing of information in a different way. The other thing that you said that really strikes a chord with me, which is great, is as far as you said, a meditation protest, a bike protest. It takes Malcolm X's and Martin Luther King's, and everyone has to do what they're comfortable with, pushing themselves towards perhaps uncomfortable situations when the necessity calls, which I would say this does. But it is nice to hear that you're saying that there's a lot of different ways that people are becoming involved. Are there any other ways that you're seeing that people, you said meditations, bike?
Yeah, I think specifically in New York, there's just been a lot of community support. So people are coming out to the protests and standing on the side and handing out water and snack. There's people that, are healthcare professionals that are coming out with first aid kits and just marching along with the protest to make sure if anyone needs anything, if anyone gets too hot, if anyone gets dehydrated. At a lot of the larger protests that I've been to, a section of the protesters actually come out with bikes, and they lead the street clearing of the block in front of the protest so that the protesters can cross safely. Other people are coming to protest with speakers and megaphones so that voices can be amplified and information can be shared easier. So it's been really amazing just to see how people have just organically taken on different roles that make sense for them at the protest and are helping out in other ways than just speaking and marching.
Thank you for sharing. On to our question number 2. What are some key issues that have been raised?
Yeah, so I think, nationally and internationally, the largest issue was, of course, police brutality and kind of the history of police brutality in the United States and the way it hasn't been addressed and the way it is connected to mass incarceration and which is connected to Jim Crow and which is connected to slavery and kind of just the lack of education that we have as a culture of these systems and how they are all very much so connected and how the basically sanctioned murder of a lot of Black people is connected to these larger systemic issues. In New York right now, I think the kind of largest issue that is being discussed after 50A was repealed and after the Eric Garner anti-chokehold bill was introduced and passed, now the biggest conversation is about defunding the police. So, protesters in New York are asking, and some local community members and council members are asking for $1 billion to be defunded from the police and for that money to be invested in community services and education. So that's kind of like the big push that's happening right now. And just recently, a couple of days ago, a group began to occupy City Hall as kind of like a permanent and ongoing demonstration to make sure that defunding happens.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing because I think it's so easy to grab we're always looking for memeable things. And it's like, oh, defund the police. And then someone will screenshot it and then say, oh, they want to abolish police. And some people want to abolish. And I'm not saying, but I think it is important to point out everyone who says defund is not saying abolish. And right. Defunding is reduction of funding, taking some of the duties off of the police's plate and putting that money towards what I would say is preventative medicine. Is that your impression of the appropriate words that I'm using? Yeah,
absolutely. I think they are very different. And I think people that are calling for abolishment of police are pushing for exploring community-based security measures that haven't been explored. And the people that are asking for the police to be defunded are really evaluating, like you said, all of the many issues that law enforcement is expected to cover that maybe it's not appropriate for them to be covered. Do we need to have police officers in schools? Do we need to have police officers in train stations? Things like that. And all of that money that we are spending on having law enforcement in these places, we could really be putting into uplifting communities.
Right. Getting more at the source, perhaps. Interesting how everything you kind of touched on when you're talking about mass incarceration all the way through. I know we're in a capitalistic society, but when there is money involved, there's bias involved. Yeah. Bias involved, you don't always see the best version of people. Again, this interview is completely about you, but my biggest issue politically has always been campaign financing reform. If you cannot take the money out of politics, we are just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah.
That is my 2 cents on that, and we shall move on. So, what does continued activism, community involvement look like for you?
Yeah, for me specifically, it's been, just the first level for me has been making it a daily practice. And I think outside of youth development in the past, I've been reactionary. I'm like, something has happened, someone's been killed, this is horrible. What do I need to do right now about this specific case and this specific person? How do I support? And I'm kind of shifting my focus to what does local legislation look like in New York City? Who has a track record of actually showing that they're concerned about law enforcement in New York City and about taking money away from them and uplifting the community, and about finding out how I can attach myself to organizations that are already doing the work so that I can have a consistent involvement in the work that's being done, as opposed to just getting involved when something happens.
Yeah, who are the people, some of the people in New York, because our audience is primarily New York and beyond. Who are some of the candidates that have come up? And I always find this interesting, is to ask the question of, in hindsight, who was the most right the earliest? That's always an interesting test, because you never really know until the time has passed. Who has kind of come up and has been on the right side for a while, that's kind of turned your ear and piqued your interest?
Yeah, so I'm terrible with names. There is hopefully I'm not pronouncing it incorrectly, but the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus in New York City, and they have been doing a lot of work on the legislative level, trying to introduce a lot of these bills that we're seeing getting passed right now, like repealing 50A and like the Eric Garner Anti-Chokehold Act. And they've only been able to be successful because of the amount of noise that's being made through protests and rallies. So yeah, it's just for me personally about doing my, due diligence about finding out about like the work that's being done on the local level. Again, I talk about social media a lot, but it's, it's the sign of the times, and there's a lot of information via social media, and it's really easy to connect with organizations via social media and say, this is what I do. How can I, share my resources with you to get involved? I've worked, in front of the camera for many years, and I also own a camera. So I've also been going out and documenting every day that I've been out, and taking photos, taking video, and just compiling like a documentation of everything that I've been witnessing for the past few weeks. So yeah, for me, it's just all about finding where I fit in, and elaborating on how I can make it a continued practice.
And have you ever had, with social media, the amount of information coming in is exponentially more than it used to be with just a local paper? Yeah. So have you had, as a bit of a fact checker, I like to always kind of like look in and check the sources and almost go to the opposite person's opinion. Like I'm proud to say that, as exhausting as it may be, that I get CNN news briefs, I get Fox news briefs. I listen to something that maybe I would more agree with. I'll go, if something big happens, honestly, I'll go to Fox News very quickly to see what the way that it's being covered, or if it's being covered, and things like that. Have you had any moments with all the information that's coming at you, kind of in your fact checking of what's been going on, where you've been let down, where you felt like something was presented at a higher level of integrity than when you dug a little bit it actually was, or has that not happened yet?
I don't know if that specifically happened, but for me, it's been great to use social media as a starting point, not as an ending point. So for example, there's been like a lot of share about, Black-owned businesses on social media. So it's like, you receive that information about the Black-owned businesses, and then for me, I go and look up those individual businesses and try to find out a little bit more about what they're doing and use my own personal discernment. So that's been my way. I love to share on social media, specifically Instagram. I think it's amazing. But for me, again, it's a starting point.
I've never heard it stated that way, and I really like the way that you just put it. How to view Instagram curation of information as a starting point, not the end point. That's kind of your jump off point. Thanks very much. All right, what is some advice for those who would like to get involved in advocating for change that you would give?
Yeah, just speaking from personal involvement, to one, get involved in a way that feels comfortable for you. And so, I live in New York City. I live by myself. I've been home in quarantine isolation for 3 months. Like, I'm well. So going out and attending protesting and rallies makes sense for me. Mm-hmm. That might not be a circumstance that everyone can do. You might live with family. You might live with elderly, and for whatever, or you might have to work every single day, and for whatever reason that might not be the avenue for you. So for me, it's just been like, okay, what can I do now? And then adding to that, I've also been trying to have a dialogue with myself about what areas do I not feel as comfortable about, and why. So I mean, we spoke about this already, but for me, I've never really thought of myself as a super politically involved or motivated person. And, this past few weeks, I've been forced to acknowledge that there's a lot that I don't know about politics and legislation, specifically on the local and the state level. And so that's an area that I'm just recently starting to learn about and navigate, and I'm hoping to continue to do that. Yeah, so it's just about kind of like starting where you feel comfortable and then recognizing where you don't feel comfortable, and just giving space to evaluate why you don't feel comfortable in those spaces and what spaces you maybe could do a better job of occupying. That's what it's been for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to bring up, is that if everyone just figured out how they felt and walked up to the line of discomfort, if everyone collectively did that, then there wouldn't have to be as many people going into uncomfortable situations when necessary. And I think that's the perhaps the tipping point for something like this, which this does feel different. Mm-hmm. That being said, we'll see how the judicial system plays out.
Yeah,
that obviously matters in this. But that being said, it feels like more people are looking in the mirror and saying, what am I comfortable with something that I disagree with? And if more people end up doing that, it raises the tide up, and then maybe it doesn't have to be so uncomfortable and so many people extending themselves beyond what they would feel comfortable for something that they feel passionate about. Right. So it's really well put. I hope everyone takes your advice on how to be more involved and a good advocate. 5 years from now, what kind of changes do you want to see? What do you want this to look like? What do you hope it's going to look? I'm going to ask this a little bit of a different way. What do you want to see? And then what do you think, if you're a betting person, what do you think will be the difference?
I hope 5 years from now, we can, specifically in New York, I hope 5 years from now, we can look back and say that we have really drastically changed how we allocate resources to different communities. Something that I've learned a little bit about during this time is that communities that have lower crime rates do not have lower crime rates because of police presence. They actually have lower crime rates because they have more resources. So this is, it's a race issue, but it's a class issue and it's an economic issue. So, what is our commitment, not to just Black and brown people and people of color, but what is our commitment to Black and brown people that live in underserved communities? And how will we really change, change the way the city allocates resources to those communities, to make sure that they're getting the services and the opportunities that they need.
And what else needs to happen? And I know that sounds like I'm not putting down your response. There is a part of me that feels that all of the money could shift, and that's just looking at kind of like the top of the nail, and there's totally more to it. What's the rest? What's that spherical answer as far as what needs to happen? Like, I'll say campaign financing reform, because I feel like that bleeds into everything. You've said reallocation of resources. What else is in there that are the variables that end up contributing in ways that people might not think, and have a coupling effect in order to move us in the right direction away from where we've been? What comes to your mind?
The first thing that comes to my mind is honestly education on an individual level. Do we really on an individual level understand what mass incarceration is? Do we on an individual level really understand what the prison industrial complex is? And how are we in our daily lives supporting these things? Can we make changes on an individual level to stop these systems that we don't agree with? So yeah, I mean, for me, it definitely starts there. I don't know if that's a full answer to your question, but for me, on a personal level, I feel like I'm currently in the midst of a re-education. And I think if we all participate in this type of re-education, this movement won't end. Yeah.
I agree with you, and I hope that at the end, it's not giving, it's giving opportunity is the lens that I look at it through, is how to give, because I look at it, as you said, there are ties with race to class, economics, to everything. It's a very complicated animal that exists, and for me, as I look at it, as healthcare. Okay, so helping to do some more work to raise people's health IQ. If you can raise people's health IQ, then perhaps you'll have some sort of better outcomes. Like, that's in there somewhere. My father has volunteered with Covenant House forever now, and trying to figure out ways to make sure that opportunities are given, but safety has to occur as well. Like, some people, opportunity may look like, my mom just got a new boyfriend, and I'm 18 years old, and now I'm out on the street. I need a place over my head so I can continue to make use of what I have as my opportunities. And so that might be a bed at Covenant House. But for someone else, opportunity or protection of opportunity or giving more opportunity can look completely different. Yeah. And I think that those are part of the conversations that need to end up occurring between people. Is a lot of people, I think, get biased to what affected them, and whether that was economic or something else. But really trying to hit this from many angles takes a lot of people having a lot of conversations about their experiences and educating people, so that then they can end up hopefully coming to a good answer to address the multifactorial problem that we have.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I will open this up for questions right now.
Okay.
This is exciting. No one ends up having any questions because you covered things so well. I will preemptively say thank you, and then I'll thank you again if we get any questions.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Zoje, just do us a favor. Tell us, one, how everybody can find you if they'd like to, follow your work or anything like that. And then two, just tie it up a little bit for us. Like, what do you want people to leave this conversation thinking about?
Sure. I mean, I think the easiest way to find me, of course, is on Instagram. So I am at Zoje A, at ZOJE A. My Instagram looks completely different than it did a month ago, which is a great thing, because I'm just personally trying to participate in the share of information that's going on right now. And so I'm not really posting much that is career focused, but really a lot of information that is like community organizing focused. So please, if you're interested in finding out, the kind of organizing and meetups that are happening in New York City, I'm posting a lot. So feel free to check that out. And what I would like for everyone to receive from this today, I feel as though the most encouragement that I receive is from seeing my peers in my community doing the work. And that's what motivates me and that's what uplifts me. So I would encourage everyone to do the same. When you are talking about these issues, when you are posting about these issues, when you're sharing about these issues, you encourage others to do the same thing. And so, it's one thing to call and check in on your friends, but if you can also put some of your energy into practice, that is a really, really great way to inspire other people too. So I would just encourage everyone to try to participate in practice in ways that they can and in ways that make sense to them.
Zoje, I thank you. I thank you for inspiring. I thank you for putting things so eloquently. I thank you for being such a kind human. And I thank you for letting me feel the pride that I get to see knowing you. So thank you so much, my friend.
Thank
I will
you.
talk to you later. And thank you everyone for stopping by. And we hope that this helped you out just a little bit. Everyone be well, and we'll talk to you later.
Absolutely. Thank you.